The last thing my daughter said to me was, "I love you," or even "I'm fine." It was, "Stay out of my life." Not shouted, not sobbed, just delivered clean and final like a gavel. She stood in my doorway with her keys in her fist, chin lifted, eyes dry. That steadiness scared me more than tears would have. Tears are messy, human. This was precision. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I searched her face for the girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who used to talk too fast when she was excited. But the person in front of me looked like someone who'd rehearsed this speech until it no longer hurt. "Sweetheart," I managed, because mother words come out even when your heart is breaking. "I'm not trying to control you. I just—" "You always say that," she cut in. Her voice stayed level, almost polite. "And then you do it anyway." I wanted to protest. I wanted to list every time I had stepped back, every time I had swallowed questions, every time I had told myself she was grown. But the harder I reached for evidence, the more I sounded guilty, like someone arguing with a verdict. "Just tell me what I did," I whispered. She blinked once, slow. "You don't get to do that anymore," she said. "You don't get to make me explain myself so you can feel better." That sentence hit me in two places at once, the chest and the pride, because part of me did want relief. I wanted a clean apology that would unknot everything. But I also wanted to understand. Understanding is how we keep our children safe, by knowing where the sharp edges are. "I'm your mother," I said, and the words sounded like a plea instead of a title. "And I'm not your project," she answered. Then she looked down at her phone. Her thumb moved, quick. A tiny click, the kind you barely notice in normal life, sounded like a door lock. Blocked. Right there, in front of me, my number became a dead end. My messages would vanish into the void. She didn't even wait to see my reaction, just slid past me and walked down the steps as if she had already left weeks ago and her body was only catching up. I stood on the porch after her car pulled away. The air smelled like rain and cut grass. Somewhere a neighbor's dog barked. The world kept doing its regular, ordinary things while something inside my life cracked clean in half. Back inside, the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. I told myself, respect the boundary. Do not chase. Do not become the villain in her story. I opened my phone and stared at our last thread, blue bubbles from me, gray from her. The final message I'd sent that morning now looked like a crime. "Call me when you get a chance. I'm worried." Worried? That word had become a weapon in her hands. I went and put her favorite mug away and froze because it wasn't in its place. The shelf was bare where it always sat. She had taken it. Of all things, not the framed photos, not the blanket she'd claimed for years. She took the mug. It should have meant nothing. A young woman taking a piece of home because she was angry and didn't want to admit she was still attached. But that mug had a crack in the handle, a thin line like a lightning bolt. I had offered to replace it last month. She refused, laughing, saying, "It's fine. I know how to hold it." And now she'd taken the broken one, instead of any of the uncracked mugs in the cabinet. My throat tightened. A cracked handle is easy to grip when you're careful, when you're steady, when you're not shaking. My mind did what it always does when I'm afraid. It started filling in blanks with worst-case stories. Maybe she'd left in a hurry. Maybe she'd grabbed the nearest thing. Maybe she just liked it. Then another memory rose, uninvited. Last week, when I'd hugged her goodbye and felt her stiffen, not with anger, but with something like alarm. As if touch itself was dangerous. I looked at my phone again and saw the time stamp of her block. 3 minutes after she said the words. 3 minutes after she met my eyes. 3 minutes after she walked away. That kind of timing isn't emotion. It's procedure. I typed anyway, even though I knew it wouldn't reach her. "Please, if you're safe, just send me a single word." The screen stayed silent. No delivered. No read. Just emptiness, as clean and final as her voice. I wanted to be the kind of mother who could let go gracefully, who could trust that this was just a storm and she would come back when she cooled off. But in the space where trust should have been, something colder moved. Because boundaries are one thing, disappearing is another. And that cracked mug, missing from the shelf, felt less like a souvenir and more like a signal. Stay out of my life, she'd said. What if she wasn't asking for space? What if she was warning me away? Before my daughter learned how to say, stay out of my life, like it was a locked door, we had a language that didn't need keys. We had our rituals, ordinary things that didn't look like love from the outside, but were. Saturday mornings were for grocery runs and bad singing in the car. She'd steal my sunglasses, perch them on her nose, and announce that she was the CEO of snacks. I'd argue with her as an executive, and we'd negotiate over which cereal counted as a business expense. Our jokes were ridiculous on purpose. They were a way of saying, I see you, I'm here, we're okay. When she was younger, she used to leave sticky notes in my purse. Don't forget you're cool. Or, reminder, drink water, Mom. I kept them long after the adhesive died, like paper proof that I was still her safe place. Even when she started rolling her eyes at me in public, she'd still lean her head on my shoulder when we watched movies at night. That was our compromise: independence in daylight, comfort in the dark. I wasn't a perfect mother. I didn't always pick the right words. I worried too loudly sometimes. But I tried to be the kind of parent who raised a daughter with a spine. I wanted her to have opinions, boundaries, a future that belonged to her. So when she started wanting more space, later curfews, privacy, her own decisions, I pushed against my instincts and told myself, this is what you prayed for. I helped her fill out forms. I practiced interview questions with her at the kitchen table. I celebrated her first paycheck like it was a graduation. When she got her driver's license, I handed her my spare key and said, you don't have to ask permission to live your life. Just tell me you're safe. And she laughed and promised. She always promised. That's the thing about trust. You don't notice it building because it feels like air. It's only when it thins that you start gasping. Shift didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It arrived in quiet edits, like someone rewriting a sentence while you're still reading it. First, she stopped telling me the small things. Not the big life decisions, those came later, but the everyday details that used to spill out of her without effort. She'd come home and say, fine, when I asked how her day was. She'd shrug instead of rant. She'd eat dinner with one earbud in, half present, as if her real life was happening somewhere else and I was just. I told myself it was normal. I told myself she was growing up. I told myself not to be the mother who clings. Then she changed her phone passcode. It sounds silly, like a petty detail, but I noticed because she didn't make a big deal of it. One day I asked her to check something, an email about a class, a confirmation text from a dentist, and she looked at me, paused, and said, I'll do it later. Her hand moved instinctively to shield the screen, like a reflex she didn't even know she'd developed. The next time I glimpsed her typing the code, it wasn't the one I'd known for years. I didn't demand it. I didn't even ask. I wanted her to have privacy. Privacy is healthy. Privacy is normal. But secrecy is something else. Secrecy has weight. You can feel it in the way a person carries their phone like it's a second heartbeat. New names started floating around our house, people I'd never heard of. Mia and Jax and Kara, said quickly, without stories attached. She used to tell me everything about her friends, their dramas, their dreams, their terrible tastes in music. Now it was like she was protecting them from being known, or protecting herself from being associated with them in my mind. Her schedule changed, too. She began picking up shifts at odd hours, leaving the house in outfits that didn't match the job she claimed she was going to. Comfortable clothes when she said she'd be in a professional place. Too dressed up when she said she'd be exhausted. She'd come home smelling like soap or a different perfume, and when I asked if she'd switched brands, she'd say, "It's nothing," like my curiosity was an insult. The warm, familiar girl didn't vanish all at once. She flickered in and out, which was worse. Some nights she'd sit at the counter while I cooked, telling me a funny story about a customer or a coworker, and I'd feel relieved. There she is, we're okay. Then her phone would buzz and the air would change. Her shoulders would rise. Her smile would tighten. She'd step outside to take the call, packing in the dark like someone trying to keep a secret from the walls. Once I heard her laughing softly on the porch, the kind of laugh she used to have with me, unfiltered, warm. I waited for her to come back inside and share it, but she didn't. She ended the call, wiped her face, and re-entered the house like a person returning from a different country. When I asked what was funny, she said, "Nothing," again. I tried to do what a good parent is told to do, give her room. I started knocking before I entered her bedroom. I stopped asking for details. I stopped commenting on her clothes, her friends, her plans. I chose my battles until I had almost no battles left, only silence. And still, the distance grew. Looking back now, I can see the pattern in the small moments I ignored. The way she'd keep her bag on her lap instead of setting it down. The way she'd angle her body away from me when she texted. The way she'd ask strange questions. If someone wanted to change their name, how hard is it? And then laugh like it was a joke when I answered seriously. Trust had been our default setting, like a house that didn't need locks. But slowly, she was installing new ones. Not just on her phone, but on herself. The night she told me to stay out of her life, it wasn't a sudden decision made in anger. It was the final step in a plan already in motion. And standing in my kitchen, staring at the empty spot where her cracked mug used to be, I understood something that made my skin go cold. This boundary wasn't just emotional. It was strategic for me. The first time I realized my daughter wasn't just keeping secrets. She was living inside one, was over a piece of paper that should have meant nothing. It was a receipt. I found it the way mothers find evidence, accidentally, while doing something ordinary. I was clearing the kitchen counter, stacking mail, wiping away crumbs that weren't mine, trying to make the house feel like it still belonged to both of us. Her cracked mug was gone, but the clutter of life remained. When I opened the junk drawer to toss the paper, it fluttered out like a confession. A coffee shop receipt, date and time stamped in neat black ink, nearly midnight. And a name at the top that wasn't hers. Not a nickname, not a typo. A different first name entirely, printed like it belonged to the card that paid. My brain tried to be generous. Maybe she bought it for a friend. Maybe the barista misheard. But the name was spelled correctly, and beneath it was an email I'd never seen before. I stood there holding the paper, waiting for it to become harmless. It didn't. It just stayed what it was. Proof that somewhere, in some version of her life, my daughter answered to another name. I tried calling her anyway. Straight to voicemail. No ring. Just the cold, automated voice that confirms your child can erase you with a thumb. I told myself to put it down. Respect her boundary. Don't turn one odd detail into a whole story. I folded the receipt and slid it back into the drawer like it was trash, not evidence, and I went to bed with my heart thudding too loudly in my ears. The next morning, denial broke. My phone buzzed with a notification from a rideshare app I didn't use. I almost swiped it away as spam until my eyes caught the words, "Your trip is complete." Not my name, not my account, but my credit card. My hands went cold. That card had been saved on her phone for years. Emergencies, gas, groceries. Trust used to be our default setting, and we'd never updated the terms. The notification showed a pickup point and a drop-off point. Pickup, near her workplace. Drop-off, across town, in a neighborhood I only knew because I'd taught myself to avoid it at night. I checked my bank app. The charge was pending, small enough to ignore, loud enough to hear. She had used my money, and she hadn't told me where she was going. I called again. Voicemail. My instinct screamed, drive to that address, knock on doors, demand my daughter back like she was stolen property. But another voice warned me that charging in could slam the last door she'd left cracked open. If she was hiding, she had a reason. If she was lying, she was protecting something. Or someone. I typed a message anyway, even though I knew it wouldn't deliver. Are you okay? I got a charge on my card. Please just tell me you're safe. Silence. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't wanted to do. I opened her social media, not to punish her, but to find her. The accounts I knew were quiet lately, like she'd stopped posting in the life I could see. But one of her old friends had tagged her in a photo. It took me a second to recognize my own daughter. Her hair was pulled back tighter. Her makeup was different. Even the angle of her smile looked practiced. She stood under a neon sign outside a place she had sworn she'd never been, a downtown venue that stayed open late. 2 weeks earlier, when I'd asked about downtown, she'd laughed and said, I don't even go there, Mom. It's not my scene. And yet the tag was there, the timestamp was there, the proof was there. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. Her hand rested on someone's shoulder, someone just out of frame. I couldn't tell who it was, and that not knowing pressed on my ribs. That night, another crack appeared. The landline rang, and when I answered, there was a pause, then a voice I didn't recognize. "Is this her mother?" the voice asked. My heart leapt. Yes, who is this? The line went dead. I stared at the receiver, then tried calling back. Nothing. No ring, no voicemail, just a tone that told me the number wasn't meant to be found. My daughter wanted distance, but this felt like surveillance in reverse, someone checking whether I was watching or whether I would interfere. My mouth tasted metallic. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. After that, I started noticing the second pattern, the one that turned my worry into something darker. Late-night movement. Not just her being out, but the way the house reacted to it. The creak of the back step at 2 a.m., the careful click of the lock. The quiet way she slipped inside, like she didn't want to disturb more than dust. In the morning, her eyes would be too bright, her hands too steady, as if she'd practiced acting normal. Unfamiliar numbers appeared on the phone bill. I wasn't hunting for them. The account was still in my name. Long calls, short calls, calls that happened at the same times every few days like appointments. When I looked them up, some traced to nothing at all. And then there were the messages I wasn't supposed to see. One evening, I walked past her room and her screen lit up. I didn't read the thread. I swear I didn't. But two words flashed bright enough to brand themselves into my mind. Bring it. Another day, I heard her whispering into her phone in the laundry room, voice low, careful. "I told you I can't," she said, not angry, afraid. Then, after a pause, okay, I'll figure it out." When she noticed me, she smiled too quickly and said she was talking to a coworker about switching shifts. I nodded like I believed her, and the lie sat between us like a third person at the table. I kept trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was dating someone and embarrassed. Maybe she was working more and exhausted. Maybe she was trying on a new identity, the way young people do when they're figuring out who they are. But the name on the receipt didn't feel like exploration. It felt like a tool. And the rideshare drop-off didn't feel like chance. It felt like a destination chosen for her. One evening, I stood in the hallway and listened to her laugh softly at something on her phone, and the sound didn't comfort me. It frightened me, because it meant there was a world where she could still laugh, and I wasn't invited into it. Worse, she didn't want me there. I went back to the kitchen and opened the junk drawer again. The receipt was still there, folded like a secret. I smoothed it out and read the different name one more time, forcing myself to hold the truth without flinching. This isn't rebellion. This is risk. If you've never been afraid for your child, you might think fear looks like chaos, screaming, crying, calling everyone you know. But real fear, the kind that crawls under your skin and nests there, can look like discipline. It can look like me, standing at my kitchen sink, washing the same spoon 3 times because I needed my hands to do something steady while my mind tried not to sprint off a cliff. I kept hearing her voice in my head, flat and final. Stay out of my life. So I told myself, fine. I won't barge in. I won't accuse. I won't show up at places and demand answers like some dramatic villain. I won't do anything that makes her feel hunted. And then I made a second promise, quieter and more honest. I will not let you disappear on my watch. That was the line I walked for days, restraint on one side, panic on the other. Every step felt like choosing who I was going to be, the mother who respects boundaries or the mother who saves her child. I started with what I already had, because anything beyond that felt like trespassing. Her school calendar was public, posted online like a harmless list of dates. I pulled it up on my phone and studied it the way you study a map before a storm. Exams, club meetings, early dismissals, nothing that explained midnight coffee and rideshares across town. Still, I wrote the dates down on a scrap of paper. If her story was true, her schedule should match reality. If it didn't, the lie had a shape. Then I checked the shifts she'd mentioned, the ones she used as a blanket answer when I asked where she was. I didn't call her job. I didn't want to be that mother. Instead, I looked at the business hours online and compared them to the times she'd come and gone. The place closed at 9 on weekdays. She'd been walking in at 10:30, saying she was covering. Covering what? My mind kept trying to jump ahead, to fill in the blank with something terrifying. I kept pulling it back. Evidence first, emotion later. I opened my laptop and searched the name on the receipt. Not like a detective, more like someone praying for a coincidence. Maybe it would be a friend. Maybe it would be a stupid promotional email. Maybe I'd find nothing and feel foolish and relieved. What I found was worse than nothing. The email wasn't attached to any normal accounts. No LinkedIn, no school portals, no old usernames. It was clean, like it had been created for one purpose and one purpose only, to exist. I stared at the screen and felt my chest tighten. People who are being themselves leave trails. People who are trying to be found leave trails on purpose. But people who are trying not to be found, they move like ghosts. I forced myself to take the next step the way I'd promised, carefully, ethically. I wasn't going to hack anything. I wasn't going to break into her phone. I wasn't going to catch her like a criminal. So I did the only thing I could do without crossing a line. I looked at what she forgot to hide. Her social media was quiet but not empty. Silence is never total, it's curated. Even when she stopped posting, she still existed inside other people's posts. Tags, comments, group photos that slipped through, a laugh caught in the background, a reflection in a window. I clicked through old friends first, the ones I knew from her childhood, the girls whose parents I'd texted with about sleepovers, the boys who used to show up at my door hungry after school. Familiar names made my heart ache. I wasn't just searching for answers. I was grieving the version of motherhood where it was normal to call another mom and ask, "Have you seen my kid?" Most of those friends hadn't posted with her in months. It was like she'd dropped out of her own life and built another one somewhere else. Then I found the new names again: Mia, Jax, Kara. Their accounts were half private, half performative. Lots of selfies, vague captions, heavy filters that made every face look like the same person in different wigs. I clicked slowly, telling myself I was only observing the public surface of a world my daughter had chosen. But my stomach stayed tight as a fist, because these people didn't feel like friends. They felt like a web. They posted at odd hours. They used the same phrases in comments, the same inside jokes that weren't funny unless you already belonged. They tagged each other in places that looked glamorous and dangerous at the same time: neon-lit rooms, dark parking lots, back entrances instead of front doors. And then, like a splinter sliding under a fingernail, I saw it. A profile photo on one of the accounts. A girl with her hair pulled back tight, face angled just so, expression neutral enough to be anyone. The lighting was harsh. The background was blurred, but something about the eyes made my breath snag. Not because the face was clearly my daughter. Because it was almost my daughter. The shape of the cheekbones, the slight asymmetry of the smile. The way the chin lifted with practiced confidence, like someone imitating a version of themselves they'd seen in a mirror. I clicked the photo, zoomed in, and my hands started to sweat. The username wasn't her name, it wasn't even close. It was a word and a number, like a code. The bio was blank. No school, no hometown, no jokes, no personality. Just existence. I scrolled the posts. There weren't many. A few selfies, posed in different outfits, the same dark eyeliner, the same half-smile. A photo of a coffee cup with a cracked handle. My vision narrowed. That mug. My daughter's mug. There was no mistaking it now. Same lightning bolt crack, same chipped rim eye, once threatened to sand down. The caption was a single emoji, a black heart. My throat went tight, not with tears this time, but with something sharper. Possession, proof, a marker planted like a flag. I wanted to slam the laptop shut, to pretend I hadn't seen it, to preserve the fragile idea that this was all harmless. But my hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling, because my mind was piecing the picture together faster than my heart could handle. She hadn't taken the cracked mug because she loved it. She'd taken it because it meant something in the other life. I clicked through the comments under the mug photo. Most were inside jokes I didn't understand, but one stuck out, simple and chilling in its friendliness. New look suits you. Welcome back. Welcome back. Not welcome here. Not welcome home. Not welcome to a new chapter. Back. As if she'd been there before. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen until the words blurred. My restraint, the careful, ethical steps, had been holding me together like duct tape. But now panic pushed hard from underneath, demanding motion. Drive somewhere, call someone, confront her. Do anything but sit in this quiet room with the knowledge that my daughter had built a version of herself I didn't recognize. Mother versus stranger. That was the battle, and it was happening inside my own chest. I whispered her name out loud, like saying it could bring her back. Then I looked again at the username, at the blank bio, at the cracked mug posted like a badge. And the realization came, cold and complete, settling into my bones with the weight of truth. She wasn't just hiding from me. She was hiding as someone else. Once you see the seam in someone's story, you can't stop looking for the stitches. That night, after I found the photo of the cracked mug on the anonymous account, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, pipes clicking, floorboards sighing, sounds that used to comfort me because they meant everything was normal. Now they felt like reminders that normal was something we'd already lost. I told myself I would stop. I told myself I had my answer. She had another account, another name, another circle. I told myself that was enough to justify stepping back, respecting her boundary, letting her come to me when she was ready. But my daughter's cracked mug was sitting in a photo like a calling card. And welcome back wasn't the kind of comment you leave under a harmless selfie. So I did what fear always makes you do. I kept going, not because I wanted the truth, but because I couldn't survive the uncertainty. Not knowing is a slow kind of suffocation. Every minute becomes a question mark. I started mapping her days the way you'd map a storm, carefully, without touching it, watching where it moved. She left at the same times, but she returned with little inconsistencies that now felt like footprints. A different route on her location history when she forgot to turn it off. A smear of glitter on her collar when she claimed she'd been stocking shelves. A bruise on her wrist that she explained away too quickly. I bumped into a door. A door doesn't leave a mark shaped like fingers. On the third night after the mug photo, I heard her come in late again. It was after midnight. The back lock clicked softly. Her steps were slow, measured, as if she was listening more than walking. I stayed in my room, heart racing, because I didn't want to corner her. I didn't want to trigger another stay out speech. I just wanted to know she was breathing. She went to the kitchen. I waited until I heard the cabinet open, then the familiar sound of ceramic against counter. A mug. Not her mug, mine. The one I used when I couldn't sleep. I slipped out of my room and stopped at the end of the hallway, half hidden by shadow. The kitchen light was on low, throwing a thin yellow line under her jaw. She wore a hoodie that wasn't hers. The sleeves were too long, the shoulders too wide. Her hair was pulled back tight, the way it was in that profile photo. Her makeup had been wiped off, but the eyeliner had left a faint dark shadow, like she'd been someone else and didn't have time to fully come back. She stood at the counter, hands shaking around my mug. Then her phone buzzed. She flinched so hard the mug rattled. That reaction wasn't teenage annoyance. It was reflexive fear. She glanced toward the hallway, toward my room, then lowered the screen and typed fast, her thumbs moving like they'd rehearsed. The brightness reflected in her eyes for a fraction of a second, and I saw words on the lock screen before she swiped them away. Where are you? 3 simple words, the kind a parent texts when they're worried. But this wasn't from me. A new message popped up immediately after. Answer. Not please, not are you okay. Answer. My daughter's shoulders rose tight, then she typed back with stiff urgency. I couldn't see what she wrote, But I watched the way her face changed as the conversation continued. How she tried to smooth it into something neutral, how she swallowed hard, how she stared at the phone like it held a threat. She turned slightly, and her sleeve fell back just enough for me to see the inside of her wrist. There were marks there, not fresh scratches, not a bruise. A stamp. Dark ink blurred at the edges like she'd tried to scrub it off. A symbol, small, sharp, deliberate. The kind you get at clubs to prove you paid entry. The kind you get at events where they don't want strangers walking in. She wasn't just going places. She was being processed. My mouth went dry. My hands curled into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms to keep me from stepping forward. She lifted the mug and drank, not because she wanted tea or water, but because she needed her hands occupied. Then she set it down, grabbed her phone, and walked to the back door again. I realized, in that instant, that the danger wasn't only outside the house. It was connected to her. It could walk right in with her. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold air rushed in. I stayed back, hidden, listening. Her voice was low, urgent, careful. "I told you I'm home," she whispered. A pause. "No, I can't, not tonight." Another pause, longer. "I said not tonight," she repeated, and the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She was trying to sound firm, trying to sound like she had control. Then I heard something I'll never forget, not words, but the sound of her breathing. That quick, shallow inhale people take right before they cry, right before they break, right before they do something they don't want to do. "Fine," she said, and the word came out like surrender. "I'll be there tomorrow, just stop." Stop. Not leave me alone. Stop. Like the other person had been pressing and pressing and pressing until she gave in. When she came back inside, she moved fast, locking the door, checking it twice. Then she leaned her forehead against the wood for a second, eyes closed, as if she was praying. That was the moment my denial finally died. This wasn't a daughter pushing her mother away to be free. This was a daughter being pulled somewhere she didn't want to go. Two names, two worlds. In one, she was my child, imperfect, stubborn, funny, safe enough to roll her eyes at me. In the other, she was a girl with an empty bio, a coded username, and a stamped wrist, answering commands from someone who didn't bother with kindness. I went back to my room like a ghost. My body moved, but my mind stayed on that stamp. I waited until morning, and then I did something that made me feel both ashamed and justified. I opened the photo of the mug again and zoomed in on the background. Behind the cup, blurred and dark, was part of a wall with a logo. A sign. A symbol that matched the stamp on her wrist. I searched it. The results came up slowly, like the internet itself was hesitant to show me. Some were harmless art pages, event posters, aesthetic edits. But buried among them were mentions that made my stomach drop. Underground pop-up nights, invite-only gatherings, private parties, a rotating location system. Comments talked about secrecy like it was a thrill. No phones, no tags, real ones only. And then I found a post from someone using the same symbol. It wasn't public. It wasn't meant for mothers. But it was there, shared by one of the new friends I'd seen on my daughter's feed. A blurry video under flashing lights. People pressed together in a room that looked like a warehouse dressed up like a club. The camera swung past a group laughing, then paused on a girl near the edge of the crowd. Hair pulled tight, hoodie too big, a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. My daughter. My body reacted before my mind could. Heat flooded my face, then cold. My hands started shaking so violently I had to set the phone down on the table. I stared at the screen like it was a wound. It was real. Not paranoia, not overthinking, not my imagination punishing me for being blocked. Real. I watched the video again, forcing myself to notice everything. The way she kept glancing toward someone off camera. The way she didn't dance like the others. The way her posture stayed guarded, as if she couldn't relax. As if she was there but not allowed to be fully present. She looked like a person performing fine while surviving something else underneath. Then the camera shifted, and I saw a man's hand enter the frame, resting on her shoulder, not gently. Possessive. A grip disguised as familiarity. She stiffened, and the video cut. I sat there in my kitchen, daylight spilling across the table, and realized I had reached the edge of my own rules. Up until now, I'd told myself I was investigating ethically, observing public crumbs, connecting dots she dropped on her own. But now I had proof that my daughter was in a world where secrecy was currency and control could wear the mask of freedom. My instincts screamed, expose it. Call the police. Call her job, call her school. Call everyone. Drag her out by force if I have to. But my daughter had already shown me what happens when she feels trapped. She blocks, she disappears, she becomes someone else. If I stormed in, if I named what I'd seen, if I shattered her second life out loud, she might run deeper into it just to prove she wasn't mine to rescue. Or worse, someone in that world might punish her for being connected to me, for being compromised. And there it was, the moral trap snapping shut around my heart. Do I expose this and lose her forever? Or stay quiet and risk losing her in another way? By the time I realized I couldn't solve this alone, I was already living two lives too. In one, I was the woman who went to work, smiled at neighbors, paid bills, answered "I'm fine" with convincing ease. In the other, I was a mother running on 4 hours of sleep and quiet terror, collecting fragments of my daughter like they were clues to a crime no one else could see. I kept hearing the same question in my head: who benefits from her silence? Because secrets don't grow in a vacuum. They're fed, protected, used. I needed a human connection, someone who wasn't my daughter, someone who stood close enough to her second world to know what it was, but far enough away to still have a conscience. Someone who could translate the symbols and the stamped wrist and the rehearsed answer into something I could fight. So I did the hardest thing for a mother who's been told to stay out. I reached outward, not inward. I started with a name I knew. She couldn't erase as easily as she erased me. Mia. The first time my daughter mentioned Mia, she'd said it like a dismissal. Just someone from work, she'd shrugged, eyes on her phone. But I'd caught the way her fingers tightened around the device, like the name carried weight. I didn't know where Mia lived. I didn't know what she looked like beyond filtered photos. But I knew the grocery store near my daughter's supposed job, and I knew that most people, when they're not hiding, fall into patterns. I waited in my car on a weekday afternoon, parked 2 rows away from the employee entrance, pretending to scroll through emails. My heart beat so loud I was sure it could be heard through the windshield. Every time the door opened, my body jolted, ready to recognize my daughter. She didn't appear. What did appear was a young woman with dyed hair and tired eyes, wearing the same uniform my daughter claimed she wore on late shifts. She walked fast, shoulders hunched, as if she wanted to be invisible. She checked her phone 3 times in the space of 10 steps. When she reached the sidewalk, she paused, glanced around, and then exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all day. Help offered versus help withheld, I thought. You can see it in people before they speak. I got out of my car and approached her slowly, palms open like I wasn't carrying anything dangerous. "Hi," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I'm sorry to bother you. Are you Mia?" Her face tightened immediately. Not confusion, recognition. Her eyes flicked to my hands, then to my car, then over my shoulder, scanning the parking lot like a hunted animal. "I don't know you," she said. "I'm her mother," I answered, and I hated how desperate it sounded. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I need to know if she's okay." Mia's jaw worked like she was chewing on something sharp. She took a step backward. "I can't talk," she said quickly. "Please," I said, softer. "I'm not asking you to betray her. I'm asking you to help me understand what she's in. Something isn't right." For a moment there was a flicker in her expression, pity maybe, or fear. Then it was gone. "I have to go," she repeated, but she didn't walk away. Her gaze stayed on mine for a beat longer than it should have. Then she said, very quietly, "You shouldn't be here." Those words landed like a warning and an invitation at the same time. "I know," I whispered, "but I don't know where else to be." Mia swallowed. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't let a tear fall. She lifted her chin as if she was making a decision that could cost her. "Not here," she said, barely moving her lips. "There's a diner 2 blocks away. If you're still there in 10 minutes, maybe." Then she walked off fast, not looking back. I sat in my car shaking, staring at the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in the world. A part of me wanted to drive away immediately, because if this was dangerous for my daughter, it was dangerous for anyone connected to her. But the larger part, the part that had been mothering on instinct for years, knew that when someone offers you a thread out of a maze, you take it. At the diner, Mia chose a booth in the far corner, back to the wall. She didn't order food. She didn't even look at the menu. She kept her phone face down on the table like it was both a shield and a bomb. When I slid into the seat across from her, she didn't greet me. She didn't ask how I'd found her. She just stared at my hands for a second, as if assessing whether I was the kind of person who could hold truth without dropping it. "You can't tell her I talked to you," she said. "I won't," I promised, "unless you tell me she's in immediate danger and I have to act." Mia let out a short laugh that held no humor. "You already want to act," she said. "That's what moms do, but you need to understand acting is how things get worse." My stomach clenched. Worse than what? Mia hesitated. Her gaze flicked to the window, then to the kitchen door, like she expected someone to walk in and pull her away by the hair. "She's not just going out," Mia said finally. "She's involved." "In what?" My voice cracked on the word. Mia inhaled slowly. "It starts as parties," she said. "Invite only. People act like it's exclusive, like you're special if you get in. They make it feel like freedom. No rules, no parents, no judgment." Freedom versus control, my mind echoed. "But it's not freedom," Mia continued, voice tight. "It's a system." "A system," my skin prickled. "She told me it was just fun," Mia added, as if talking to herself now. "She said she wanted to feel grown, wanted money, wanted to be someone else." I thought of the receipt, the alternate name, the blank bio. "Someone else," I repeated softly. Mia nodded, eyes dropping. "They like girls who want that," she said. "Girls who are hungry, girls who have something to prove." My throat tightened. "Who are?" Mia's fingers tapped once against the table, like a nervous habit trying to become a prayer. "You didn't hear it from me," she said. "But there's a group. They run the nights, they recruit, they manage people." Manage, the word made my stomach turn because it matched what I'd felt in my bones. My daughter's rehearsed lines, her fear when the phone buzzed, the stamp on her wrist. "How?" I asked, forcing myself to breathe. Mia's eyes lifted to mine, and in them I saw the exact thing she was trying to hide: regret. "They give you something," she said. "At first, money, a ride, a place to belong. They make you feel like you're finally in control of your own life, and then they make you pay for it." My pulse hammered. "Pay how?" Mia swallowed. "It depends," she said. "Sometimes it's just loyalty, showing up when they say, doing what they say, smiling like you're having the time of your life so no one asks questions." I pictured my daughter in that blurry video, stiff under someone's hand. "And sometimes," Mia continued, voice dropping, "it's debt." "Debt," I repeated, and my mouth went numb. Mia nodded once. "They'll cover your rent, your phone, your emergencies. They'll buy you things. Then they'll keep receipts, screenshots, messages, photos, proof. And once you've accepted enough, you're not free anymore." A cold wave moved through me. It wasn't just money. It was leverage. Blackmail. Shame. The kind of pressure that turns a person into a puppet while still letting them believe they're dancing. "Is she?" I couldn't finish the question. My tongue felt too heavy. Mia's face softened for the first time. "I don't know everything," she said quickly, like she needed to protect herself from the full truth. "I'm not in deep. I got out early, but she's newer and they like her. She's pretty. She's smart. She thinks she can outplay them." I heard my daughter's voice again. "I'm not your project." She wasn't wrong. She wasn't weak. She was brave in the way young people are brave, believing their strength is enough to shield them from consequences. And if she tries to leave? I asked. Mia's jaw tightened. They don't like people leaving, she said, not without a price. My hands curled under the table, gripping my own fingers like I could hold myself together. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. If you're afraid. I am afraid, Mia cut in, her eyes flashed. You think I want to be sitting here, you think I want to carry this around, but she's not a bad person, she's lost. Lost, my chest ached. Mia leaned forward, lowering her voice further. Listen, she said. If you go to her and say you know, she'll deny it, and then she'll run, or they'll make her run. My stomach dropped. So what do I do? Mia stared at me for a long second, then said the words that turned my blood to ice. They're watching her, she said, and if you're too loud, they'll watch you too. I sat back, the din of the diner suddenly too bright, too normal, too cruel. People laughed at nearby tables. Plates clinked. Someone complained about coffee being cold. Life was happening, ordinary and safe, while my daughter was somewhere balancing on the edge of something predatory. Mia pushed her phone across the table just an inch. Not enough for someone else to see. Enough for me to understand she was offering a dangerous gift. I can't give you names, she said. I can't give you proof, but I can tell you this, your daughter isn't just keeping secrets. She paused, eyes steady now, like she'd accepted the cost of honesty. She's being managed. And as I sat there, absorbing that word, I realized the net around my daughter wasn't loosening. It was tightening. By the time I decided to talk to my daughter, I had already rehearsed the conversation 100 different ways. In some versions, I was brave and calm, and she melted into my arms like she used to. In others, I said the wrong thing and watched her shut down, watched her run, watched her turn into that blank-eyed stranger who could block me with one thumb and never look back. Mia's warning echoed in my head like a siren. If you're too loud, they'll watch you too. So I chose quiet. Not silence. Silence was how she got deeper into whatever this was, but quiet in the way you approach a frightened animal. Slow, careful, hands visible. That evening, I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Not a feast, not a guilt offering. Just pasta and a salad, the kind of meal that said, we are still a family, even if we're broken right now. She came home at 6:30, earlier than usual, which made my stomach twist. Early could mean safe. Early could mean hiding. Early could mean she'd been sent home. She walked into the kitchen with her phone already in her hand, eyes flicking to me and away again like eye contact was too expensive. Her hoodie swallowed her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back, tight enough to pull at my nerves. Hey, I said, as if my heart wasn't a clenched fist. There's food. She nodded, not quite a yes, not quite anything. She moved to the fridge, opened it. Stared inside like she'd forgotten what she came for. I watched her wrist when she reached for a water bottle. The stamp was mostly gone now, scrubbed into a faint bruise-colored shadow. But I saw it. I saw the outline. And I forced myself not to flinch. Restraint versus panic. Calm versus collapse. I kept my face neutral because I couldn't afford to spook her. When she sat at the table, she kept her phone beside her plate like a second utensil. She ate quickly, barely tasting, eyes drifting to the screen every few seconds. Each time it lit up, her shoulders tightened. Each time it stayed dark, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. I waited until she'd taken a few bites. I waited until the clink of fork against plate created a small rhythm I could anchor myself to. Then I said gently, "Can we talk for a minute?" Her fork stopped midair, not from surprise, from calculation. "About what?" she asked, voice flat. "About us," I said. "About whatever's going on." Her jaw tightened. "There's nothing going on." I took a slow breath, letting the air fill my lungs like a decision. "I'm not here to control you," I said. "I'm not asking for your passwords or your location or your friends' names. My throat caught and I had to swallow hard. I feel you slipping away and I'm scared." For a second, something flickered across her face. Not softness, not guilt, something closer to exhaustion, like my words landed on a bruise. But then she hardened. "You're scared," she repeated, and there was a bite in it. You're always scared. That's your thing, Mom. You wrap it up like love and then you use it to make me feel trapped. I'm not trying to trap you, I said carefully. I'm trying to understand. You don't need to understand, she snapped. You need to back off. I nodded slowly, like I was absorbing a lesson instead of bleeding. Okay, I said. I can back off on details, but I can't back off on caring whether you're safe. That word, safe, hit her like a slap. Her eyes flashed. I am safe, she said too quickly, too loudly. God, you're so dramatic. I'm not trying to be dramatic, I said. I kept my voice low. I'm trying to be honest. She pushed her plate away, appetite gone. Honest, she scoffed. You mean like how you accidentally show up places? Or how you call people and act like you're just concerned but really you're fishing? My skin prickled. Fishing. She didn't know about Mia. She couldn't. And yet, her wording was sharp, specific, like she'd been handed a list of accusations to throw at me. I haven't shown up anywhere, I said softly. I haven't called your friends, I haven't. Don't lie, she cut in, and the anger in her voice sounded borrowed, like she was wearing it because it fit the moment. You always do this. You dig and dig until you find something to judge me for. I'm not judging you, I said. I'm worried there's a difference. She stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. No, there isn't, she said, eyes bright. To you, worry is just permission. I watched her hands. They weren't steady. They kept flexing at her sides, fingers opening and closing like she was trying not to grab her phone. Can you just sit back down? I asked, still calm, still careful. I'm not attacking you. She laughed once, sharp. You're always attacking me, she said. You just do it with that voice. My chest tightened. I could feel the conversation tilting toward a cliff, and I didn't know how to stop it without pushing her harder. So I tried a different angle, truth without accusation. I miss you, I said quietly. I miss the way we used to talk. I miss knowing what's going on in your life. And I know you don't owe me every detail. I know you're grown. But this distance feels different. It feels like you're not just living your life. It feels like you're disappearing from it. Her face twitched, just slightly, like the word disappearing touched something tender. Then she turned that tenderness into a weapon. You're making this about you, she snapped. You always do. You act like my life exists to keep you comfortable. No, I said, voice shaking despite my effort. I'm saying your life matters to me, that's all. She grabbed her phone and pointed it at me like a shield. See, she said, this is exactly it. You're doing it right now. You're trying to guilt me into telling you things. I'm not, I insisted. I'm trying to connect. Connect, she repeated, and the word came out like she'd been taught to spit it. You don't want connection, you want access. I froze. Access. It was such a strange word for a daughter to use about her mother. Clinical, cold, like we were negotiating terms in a contract. My mind flashed to Mia's face in the diner, the way she'd said, acting is how things get worse, and to the text I'd seen on my daughter's phone, answer. This didn't feel like a private argument between mother and daughter anymore. It felt like a script. I forced myself to keep breathing. I'm not asking for access, I said slowly. I'm asking for honesty, even if it's just, Mom, I'm struggling. Even if it's just, Mom, I'm in something I don't know how to get out of. Her eyes widened for half a second, pure panic, unmasked. Then she snapped the mask back on. I'm not in anything, she said too fast. You're insane. Insane, not wrong, not mistaken, insane. The word hit me like a shove. Sweetheart, I whispered, because I couldn't stop myself. Why are you talking to me like I'm your enemy? She opened her mouth, and for a moment I expected her to say something real, something messy, something human. Instead, she said, in a voice that didn't sound like her at all, if you keep pushing, you're going to make things worse for me. I went still. Not you'll make me upset, not you'll ruin our relationship, not I'll leave. Worse for me. The emphasis wasn't on her feelings. It was on consequences. Her eyes flicked to the window, then to the hallway, as if she expected someone to appear and confirm she'd said the right line. Her hand tightened around her phone until her knuckles went pale. A rehearsed line, a warning delivered like it had been practiced. Someone coached her. I felt it in my bones with sudden clarity. My daughter wasn't only angry, she was afraid, and the fear wasn't directed at me. I stood slowly, keeping my hands visible. "Okay," I said, voice gentle. "I'm not going to push tonight." Her shoulders sagged a fraction, relief leaking through despite her anger. Then she stiffened again, remembering her role. "Good," she said sharply, "because I'm done talking about this." She moved toward the hallway, then paused, not turning back. "And if you really love me," she added, voice quieter, "you'll stop trying to fix me." Then she disappeared into her room and closed the door. The latch clicked, soft and final. I stood in the kitchen alone, staring at her half-eaten dinner. The room smelled like garlic and disappointment. My hands trembled, not from rage, but from the effort of holding myself together. I had walked into that conversation believing the conflict was between her independence and my worry. But her words had drawn a new outline around the problem, sharp and unmistakable. This wasn't just a mother and daughter in a power struggle. This was a mother trying to reach her child through someone else's hands. And for the first time, I recognized the real antagonist might not be my daughter's choices at all, but whoever benefited from her isolation. The night danger finally showed its face. It didn't kick the door down. It seeped in like smoke, quiet, invisible, and suddenly everywhere. It started like any other Tuesday. Dinner barely touched, my number still blocked, my daughter moving through the house like she didn't want to leave fingerprints. She said she was going out for a bit. Not where, not with who, just a bit like time itself could cover her. At the door she hesitated, phone in hand, eyes flicking to mine. For a heartbeat I saw the girl I raised, tired, cornered. "Be careful," I said. She nodded like she couldn't promise. Then she left. I told myself I would respect her boundary. Stay out, give space, trust. I told myself I could survive one night of not knowing. An hour passed, then two. The house grew heavier with each tick of the clock, as if time was stacking itself on my chest. At 9:45, I checked her old location share out of habit, even though she'd turned it off weeks ago. Nothing. I called anyway, knowing it wouldn't go through, listening to the dead-end tone like it was punishment. I tried the only other line she couldn't block, the landline. It rang into the same quiet. Then at 10:07, a text came from a number I didn't recognize. "You with her." It was all lowercase, no name, no hello. My pulse jumped. I typed back, "Who is this?" No answer. Another message followed, "Tell her to answer." My stomach dropped. The same command, the same word. I stared at the screen, frozen between two rules. Don't engage strangers, don't ignore threats. So I did the only thing that felt both safe and useful. I took screenshots, saved the number, and wrote the time down on the back of the receipt. If this went bad, I needed a trail that wasn't just my fear. At 10:20, the number called. I answered without thinking. A young woman's voice shaky. "Is this her mom?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Where is she?" I can't say," the voice rushed. "They're mad. She wasn't supposed to leave early. A breath hitched. "Please just make her pick up. If she doesn't, it gets worse." "Who are you?" I demanded, but the line went dead again, like someone had yanked the cord out of the wall. I stood there trembling, phone to my ear, listening to nothing. In the mirror over the sink, my face looked pale and wrong, like I'd aged a decade in minutes. I almost dialed 911. I almost didn't. Then a car door slammed outside, and the decision was made for me right then. Relief surged, until I saw it wasn't her car. A rideshare idled at the curb, headlights washing over my lawn, then sliding away. My phone pinged. Another rideshare charge, pending, pickup, a block from my house. My mouth went dry. She was close enough to touch, yet she wasn't coming home. Don't do it, I warned myself. Don't cross the line. Don't become the mother she fears. Then the colder thought arrived. What if she can't come home? Fear surged, but function took the wheel. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and the receipt with the other name from the junk drawer like it could keep me steady. Outside, the street looked ordinary, porch lights, quiet traffic, a normal night pretending to be safe. I drove toward the pickup point, scanning sidewalks. Then I saw two figures under a flickering streetlight. My daughter was one of them. Relief hit so hard my vision blurred. Alive, right there. Then the other person stepped closer. A man older than her, taller, posture loose with ownership. His hand lifted toward her face, not tender. Familiar, like he had the right. My daughter flinched. Not a big movement, just a fast brace, the same one I'd seen when her phone buzzed. The rideshare rolled up like it had been summoned, and the man pointed toward it. My daughter hesitated. He took her elbow. Not a dramatic grab, the kind that leaves bruises later under sleeves where no one asks. My throat closed. This wasn't teenage drama. This was control wearing the mask of escort. I could have driven away and called the police, but I pictured uniforms, questions, my daughter's face hardening into betrayal. I could have done nothing, and that felt like letting her be taken in front of me. So I crossed the line I'd sworn I wouldn't. I got out. I didn't slam the door or scream. I walked fast, voice calm, because if I sounded hysterical, I'd be dismissed. "Hey," I called like I just found them. "There you are." Both heads turned. My daughter's face drained of color. The man looked annoyed, not startled. "Mom," she hissed. I forced a tight smile. "My card, on your account," I said, grabbing the most ordinary excuse I had. "I got another charge. I need to know what's going on." The man's eyes flicked over me, measuring. "She's coming with me," he said, smooth. "With you," I kept my tone level. "Who are you?" "A friend," he replied, smiling without warmth. My daughter's shoulders hunched. "Mom, stop," she whispered. "Please." Please, not anger, fear. I turned to her. "Honey, look at me," I said softly. "Are you okay?" Her eyes darted to him, then back to me. Terror flashed, then something worse. Resignation, like no didn't count. The man's fingers tightened on her elbow. That's when function snapped into a harder gear. I reached into my pocket and dialed the one number I'd promised myself I wouldn't use. "Mia." It rang once, twice. Mia answered, breathless. "What?" "I'm with her," I said quickly. "Near my house. There's a man with her. She looks scared. What do I do?" A sharp inhale. "Don't let him take her," Mia whispered. "Don't fight him. Talk. Make noise if you have to. If he thinks there are witnesses, he'll change." The man watched my phone with cold patience. My daughter's eyes widened at Mia's name, like it was a forbidden word. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't understand," he said. "You're making this difficult for her." It was the same phrasing she'd used, making things worse for me. My blood went cold. The script ran through him too. "Then explain," I said. "Help me understand." My daughter made a small sound, almost a sob swallowed back. "Mom, please," she said again. "Just go home." "Not without you," I said, and my voice surprised me with its steadiness. The man's calm finally cracked, his eyes sharpened. "You want her safe?" he asked. "Then stop interfering. She knows what she owes." Owes? Debt, leverage. Mia's warning clicked into place like a lock. My daughter's face crumpled for half a second, then she forced it smooth. "I'm fine," she said too quickly. "I'm going, it's okay." It was okay. It was surrender dressed up as choice. I stepped closer, and the man's hand moved toward his pocket, subtle, ready. My fear screamed. My function answered. I raised my voice, not a scream, but loud enough to carry, loud enough to summon the street. "Are you threatening my daughter?" I said, clear and sharp. A porch light clicked on across the road. A curtain shifted. The world leaned closer. My daughter looked at me like I'd pulled a pin. The man released her elbow slightly and smiled again, thin and controlled. "No one's threatening anyone," he said. "We're leaving." "Not together," I said. Behind us, the rideshare driver honked, impatient. impatient enough to notice. The man's eyes flicked up and down the street, calculating. Then he leaned toward my daughter and murmured something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, it hit her like a punch. Her shoulders collapsed inward, her gaze dropped. Then she spun on me, voice loud enough for neighbors, anger snapping into place like armor. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" she shouted. "Why do you always ruin everything?" The words painted me as the villain. But her eyes didn't match her voice. Her eyes said, "I have to say this." And in that sick, shining moment, I understood the truth I'd been trying not to name. Her second life wasn't just secret. It was volatile. It could flip my daughter from fear to fury in a heartbeat, depending on who was watching. The man nodded once, satisfied, like she'd passed a test. And my stomach dropped with the certainty that tonight wasn't the worst part. I knew the match was already lit. Tonight was just the first time I'd seen the fuse. After she screamed at me in the street, after the porch lights blinked on and off like nervous witnesses, after the man's thin smile returned and the rideshare rolled away without her, I went back inside my house and realized something brutal. I could no longer afford to care whether my daughter liked me. That sounds cruel. It felt cruel. Mothers are taught to measure love by closeness, by shared jokes, late-night talks, the easy warmth of being wanted. I had been starving for that warmth, so hungry that I kept bargaining with fear. If I stay quiet, she'll come back. If I don't push, she'll trust me again. But the image of his hand on her elbow, his voice saying, "She knows what she owes," burned through every tender excuse. There are moments when parenting stops being emotional and becomes moral. When you are no longer choosing between being strict or gentle, but between being comfortable and being right. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the lights off and my phone glowing like a small moon. I opened my notes app and started writing because Mia was right. Systems thrive in shadows. And if I was going to fight a shadow system, I needed light. Not dramatic light. Documentation, dates, names, times, proof. I wrote down the receipt name and the email. I wrote down the rideshare pickup and drop-off locations. I wrote down the unfamiliar number that texted me, "Tell her to answer." I wrote down the call from the shaky voice. If she doesn't, it gets worse. I wrote down the moment in the street, the man's age range, his build, the hoodie she wore, the words he said. My hands trembled while I typed, not because I was panicking anymore, but because I was grieving. This wasn't the motherhood I imagined. This wasn't teaching her to drive or helping her pick a college. This was building a file on my child like she was a missing person. Then I took screenshots of everything. I backed them up to a cloud folder with a name that made my throat tighten. Safety. I stared at that folder for a long time, because numbing it felt like admitting something I'd been trying not to say. My daughter isn't safe. And then the next question arrived, heavy and relentless. Who can help without making it worse? If I went to the police with what I had, would they take it seriously? Or would they call it teen drama, tell me she's an adult, tell me to let her learn the hard way? If I told her job, would she get fired and pushed deeper into the other world? If I told her school, would they call her in and she'd bolt? Every option carried a blade. Loyalty versus integrity, bond versus life. I could be the cool parent, the one who backs off, who proves love by distance, who says, "I trust you even when my stomach is screaming." Or I could be the protector who risks being hated, the mother who is willing to be the villain in her story, if it means she survives to write a different ending. I stood up and walked to her bedroom door. The hallway was dark, quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. Her door was closed. No music, no TV, just the faint glow of her phone under the crack. A little rectangle of light, her second world leaking into mine. I almost knocked. Then I remembered the way she'd looked at me in the street, eyes begging while her mouth attacked. Someone coached her, someone watched, someone benefited from her isolation. If I forced a confrontation now, I might push her right into their hands. Not because she wanted to go, but because control systems thrive on simple math. Cut off the parent, and the child has nowhere to turn. So I made a different choice. I stepped away from her door and reached out to my own anchor. Someone older, steadier, someone who could help without escalating the fire. I called my sister. She picked up on the second ring, voice groggy. "What's wrong?" The question cracked something in me because it was so normal, so loving, so simple. "I need you to listen," I whispered, "and I need you not to panic." A bitter laugh escaped me, as if panic wasn't already living in my bones. I told her everything carefully, clearly, like I was testifying. The alternate name, the rideshare, the stamp, the man's grip, Mia's warnings, the words she knows what she owes. My sister didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she exhaled. "This isn't just a phase," she said. "No," I replied, "it's not." "What do you want me to do?" she asked. That question mattered because it reminded me I didn't have to do this alone. Isolation is what predators use. Family is what breaks it. "I need a second adult," I said. "Someone she trusts, someone who can show up without triggering her defenses." My sister didn't hesitate. "I'll be there tomorrow." When I hung up, I felt a small shift inside me. Not relief, not peace, but something steadier. A plan. The next morning, I contacted the only professional I thought could help without treating my daughter like a criminal. A counselor from her school. Not the front office. Not the administration. Someone trained in harm, in coercion, in the subtle violence of being managed. I didn't use dramatic words. I didn't accuse anyone by name. I didn't say trafficking or cult or abuse, because labels can shut doors if you don't have proof. I said, "My daughter is being pressured. There are signs of control. I need guidance on how to support her safely." The counselor's voice changed immediately, still calm but sharper with attention. She asked for details. I gave what I could. She told me gently but firmly that my instincts weren't irrational. "Sometimes," she said, "young adults confuse control with belonging, especially if someone has promised them power, money, or identity." Identity. Two names, two worlds. The counselor recommended a community advocate, someone trained in coercive relationships and exploitation. A person who could meet my daughter with support instead of punishment. Someone who knew the language of fear and could speak back in safety. I wrote the advocate's name down with shaking fingers. Then I did the hardest part. I set boundaries for myself. Not the kind of boundaries my daughter had used like a wall. Boundaries that were about safety. I decided I would not confront the man directly again. I decided I would not respond to unknown numbers without recording and saving everything. I decided I would not let my daughter leave the house without at least one adult knowing where she was, whether she told me or not. That last one sounded controlling even in my head. It made my stomach twist, but I reframed it the way the counselor had taught me. It's not control if it's a safety net. I didn't need to own her choices. I needed to keep her alive long enough to make different ones. That evening, my sister arrived and sat at my kitchen table like she belonged there, like family was still a real thing. When my daughter walked in and saw her, she froze. "Auntie," she said, voice wary. My sister smiled softly. "Hey, kid," she said, "I missed you." My daughter's eyes flicked to me sharp. "Did you call her?" "Yes," I said calmly, "because I needed help." "Unbelievable," she snapped. "You're recruiting people now." Recruiting, another clinical word, another borrowed edge. My sister held up her hands. "No one's recruiting," she said gently. "I'm here because I love you, because your mom's scared, and because you look exhausted." My daughter's mouth opened to attack, but the word exhausted landed differently. It wasn't an accusation. It was a mirror. She tried to laugh. It came out thin. "I'm fine." "Okay," my sister said, still soft. "Then sit for 5 minutes and prove it." My daughter hesitated, eyes darting toward her phone. She sat, but she kept the device in her lap, fingers gripping it like a lifeline. I didn't talk about the receipt. I didn't talk about the man. I didn't say I saw the video. I didn't force truth. I offered something else. "I'm not going to ask you to explain everything," I said. "I'm not going to interrogate you, but I need you to hear me." Her gaze stayed on the floor. "I will not help you hide things that put you in danger," I continued, voice steady. "That's not love. That's fear pretending to be respect." Her jaw clenched. "And I also won't punish you for telling me the truth," I added. "I'm not here to control you. I'm here to keep you safe." For a moment, she didn't move. Then her shoulders sagged just slightly, like a string inside her had snapped. It wasn't confession. It was exhaustion. Her eyes glistened, not with dramatic tears, but with the tired shine of someone who has been holding up a collapsing roof alone. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, so quietly I almost thought I imagined it. And in that whisper, I heard the truth she couldn't yet say out loud. Something had her, and she was tired of being strong for it. When my daughter whispered, "I can't do this anymore," the room didn't explode into some movie moment where everything spills out clean and dramatic. It went quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a crack in ice. Everyone frozen, listening, waiting to see if the surface will hold. My sister didn't pounce with questions. I didn't either. We'd both learned the hard way that pressure makes people run, and my daughter had been running for months. So I did the only thing that felt both gentle and strong. I slid a glass of water toward her and said, "Okay, then you don't have to do it alone." Her eyes stayed down. Her fingers clenched around her phone like it was the last rope keeping her from falling. When the screen lit up, she flinched. When it went dark, she breathed again. "That's not that simple," she said. Her voice sounded raw, like she hadn't used it for herself in a long time. "I know," I replied, "but we can make it simpler than it is right now, one step at a time." She let out a shaky laugh that wasn't laughter. "You don't understand." My instinct was to say, "You're right, so tell me," but I caught myself. Understanding was a privilege, not a demand. She didn't owe me a full story before she earned safety. So I said, "Then help me understand what you need tonight, right now." Her eyes finally lifted, just for a second, and I saw something that made my chest ache. Shame. Not guilt. Shame is different. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am something wrong. She swallowed. I need it to stop," she whispered. My sister leaned forward, voice soft. "What needs to stop, sweetheart?" My daughter's face tightened. For a moment she looked like she was about to slam the door again, to throw anger like a grenade and run behind it. But then her shoulders collapsed, the way they had in the street when the man murmured into her ear. She turned the phone in her hand, staring at it like it was a trap. "They won't stop," she said. The word "they" dropped into the room like a heavy object. It made everything real in a way no receipt or rideshare charge ever could. I kept my voice low. "Are they threatening you?" She hesitated, then nodded once, barely. Not like you think," she said quickly, as if she needed to protect her own story from being labeled. "It's just, if I don't answer, they show up. If I don't go, they make it my fault." My sister and I exchanged a glance. Not panic, not judgment. A silent agreement, steady, safe, slow. "Okay," I said. "Then tonight you don't answer." Her head snapped up. "You don't get it," she said, voice rising. "If I don't answer, they'll—" I held up my hand. "I know you're scared," I said. "But listen to me. Tonight you're not answering alone. We're here, your aunt is here, I'm here. And we're going to do this in a way that keeps you safe." She stared at me like I'd just offered to fight the ocean. Then her phone buzzed again. Her whole body tensed. She didn't even look at the screen. She just whispered, "See." I didn't grab the phone from her. I didn't yank control away like the very thing I was trying to rescue her from. I asked, "Can you show me the message?" Her hand shook as she tilted the screen toward me. 3 words, "Where are you?" Then, answer. No name, no profile picture, just a number and a command. My stomach turned, but I kept my face calm. "Okay," I said. "We're going to document this, not to punish you, to protect you." She blinked. "Document." I opened my phone and took a photo of her screen, then another, making sure the timestamp was visible. "If this becomes serious," I said, "we need evidence. Evidence turns fear into options. My daughter swallowed hard. Options. That word sounded new in her mouth. My sister spoke gently. "Sweetheart, can you tell us one thing?" she asked. "Are you in danger right now?" My daughter's eyes darted to the window, as if the night itself could hear. "I don't know," she admitted. That answer, honest, shaky, incomplete, was the first real piece of her returning. I made the next decision quickly, because hesitation is a luxury predators count on. "We're calling the advocate," I said. "Tonight." My daughter's head snapped toward me. "No," she said instantly. "No, you can't." "I'm not calling the police," I said, steady. "I'm calling someone trained to help without blowing up your life. You don't have to talk if you're not ready, but we need guidance." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked trapped between fear and fatigue. And then she said the smallest, bravest thing. "Okay, but don't tell them my real name." My chest tightened. 2 names, 2 worlds. "We'll do it your way," I promised. "You're still in control of you." The advocate answered even though it was late, voice calm in a way that made me want to cry. She asked questions like someone who had seen this before. Do they have photos? Do they control money? Do they know where she lives? Has she been injured? Does she feel she can say no? My daughter sat with her knees pulled to her chest, answering with one-word fragments at first. "Yes, sometimes, I don't know, not really." The truth came out the way trauma often does, not as a clean confession, but as pieces dropped carefully, like glass. There were parties, invite only, exclusive, a place where she could be someone else, where nobody knew her history or her mother or the expectations she'd been carrying. There was money, too. At first it felt like freedom, cash for showing up, cash for bringing friends, cash for wearing certain outfits. She told herself it was easy, that she was in control. Then it shifted. The invitations became instructions. The rides became obligations. The friends became watchers. And somewhere in there, she'd made the mistake that turned everything into a trap. She accepted help she couldn't repay. A phone bill covered just this once. A ride across town. A loan for something she didn't want to admit she needed. Each favor wrapped in warmth, each warmth turning into a receipt. "They said it was fine," she whispered, staring at the carpet. "They said I was family." Family, the word burned. And then she said the part that broke my heart in a new way. "They said you wouldn't understand. They said you'd freak out and ruin everything." My throat tightened, so it wasn't only secrecy. It was a narrative planted in her head. Your mother is the enemy. The advocate didn't shame her. She didn't scold her. She said, "That's a common tactic. Isolation makes control easier. You're not stupid for wanting belonging." My daughter's shoulders shook, not with sobbing, but with silent relief, like someone had finally named the weather she'd been surviving. The plan we made that night was not heroic. It was practical. It was boring in the best way. No more going alone. No answering unknown numbers. No rideshares paid through my card. We changed the passwords on every account she could remember. We checked her phone for tracking apps with guidance from the advocate. We blocked numbers, but we saved screenshots first. We wrote down everything she could recall: dates, places, faces, details. The advocate explained safety steps like building a fence. Not one dramatic wall, but layers. Trusted adults, documentation, changed routines, a safe contact list, emergency phrases. She asked my daughter to choose a code word she could text if she felt pressured. She asked her to think of 2 places she could go if she needed to disappear from the second world without disappearing from us. My daughter listened like someone learning a new language, the language of getting out. In the following days, the fallout came in waves. The first wave was anger, hers, mine, the world. My daughter was furious at me for being right, furious at herself for being trapped, furious at the people who had used her hunger for freedom like a leash. Some nights she slammed doors and accused me of making it worse, the rehearsed line still trying to rise out of habit. But now, when she said it, she looked at me afterward like she was waiting for me to abandon her. That was the deepest wound. She expected judgment. She expected punishment. She expected me to say, I told you so, and then use the truth as a chain. Instead, I did something that surprised both of us. I held her accountable without weaponizing her shame. Accountability looked like new rules. Her phone plan moved into a different account, not to punish but to cut off financial leverage. She wouldn't go out at night alone for a while, not because I was reclaiming control, but because a predator's favorite hour is when you're isolated. We scheduled check-ins. We agreed on boundaries that weren't walls, they were guardrails. And love looked like something else entirely. I didn't demand the full story. I didn't push for every detail about what happened at those parties. I didn't make her relive it for my own closure. I focused on now, on next, on safe. The second wave was grief. She cried one afternoon in the laundry room, the same place I'd heard her whispering into her phone weeks before. She sat on the floor with her face in her hands and said, "I thought I was strong." I crouched beside her and said the truest thing I knew. "You are strong. That's why they wanted you. Strength is attractive to people who want to steal it." She looked up at me, eyes red. "Then why do I feel so stupid?" "Because shame lies," I said. "And because you're human, being human isn't a crime." The third wave was consequence. One of the numbers started calling from blocked lines. The texts shifted from commands to threats. The advocate guided us through what to report, when to involve authorities, how to do it without turning my daughter into a spectacle. We filed reports where we could. We told only the people who needed to know. We tightened the circle instead of broadcasting the story to anyone who wanted drama. My daughter lost friends, not the real ones stayed, but the second life friends vanished when she stopped showing up. Their silence was its own proof. They were never there for her, only for what she provided. She also lost something else, the illusion that freedom means doing whatever you want. Freedom, we learned, is being able to say no without fear. Slowly, our house changed. Not back to before, because before had been built on trust that hadn't been tested. This was something new. A relationship rebuilt with honesty that didn't require full exposure, and love that didn't confuse enabling with support. Some nights we sat at the table and talked about small things again, shows, food, my sister's ridiculous gossip, and I'd catch my daughter laughing in a way that sounded like her. Not the brittle laugh from the porch, not the forced laugh from the videos. Her real laugh. One evening, weeks later, she took a mug from the cabinet and paused. It was a different mug, uncracked, plain. She held it like she wasn't sure she deserved something whole. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. The apology wasn't for blocking me, not for yelling, not for the mess. It was for the distance, for the fear she'd carried alone. I shook my head. "You don't have to be sorry for surviving," I said, "but we're going to do it differently from now on." She nodded, tears shining but not falling. "I thought you'd use this," she admitted. "I thought you'd control me." The word control hung between us, heavy with everything it had meant. I reached across the table and took her hand, slowly, giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. "I'm not interested in controlling you," I said. "I'm interested in you coming home to yourself." She squeezed my fingers, and in that small pressure I felt the shift, subtle but real. Not perfect trust, but a beginning. The second life didn't end in one dramatic finale. It ended the way most dangerous things do when they lose power. Slowly, when the person they feed on stops being alone. And the real life began the same way. Not with a grand declaration, but with a daughter sitting at a kitchen table, finally tired enough to stop pretending she was fine, finally safe enough to breathe. She had told me to stay out of her life. She hadn't expected I'd uncover her second one. But she also hadn't expected this, that I wouldn't use the truth to trap her. I used it to bring her back.